Throughout human history, war has played a crucial role in forming nations, cultures, and the entire planet. The tales of war, from prehistoric battles for resources to contemporary international wars, teach us a lot about the nature of civilization, power, and mankind. The main battles, military tactics, and the development of combat over the ages are all covered in this voyage through the history of war. The start of combat. Long before the written word existed, in the prehistoric era, there was the first indication of fighting. According to archaeological discoveries, early people engaged in conflict over survival, resources, and territory. The Sumerians and Elamites engaged in the first documented major conflict in Mesopotamia in 3000 BCE. Gilgamesh, the Sumerian king, is frequently given credit for spearheading the first attempts to enlarge his realm. Despite their modest size, these early conflicts signaled the start of organized warfare. War became a necessary component of preserving power, resources, and territorial integrity as civilizations arose in Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and China. Under Pharaoh Thutmose III, 15th century BCE, the Egyptians greatly increased the size of their kingdom by launching multiple expeditions into Syria, Palestine, and Nubia. Many people believe that the first fight in history was Thutmose's resounding victory at the Fight of Megiddo in 1457 BCE. The classical world, empire's ascent. For generations to come, warfare would be defined by the Greek and Roman empires. The Greeks demonstrated the value of strategy and tactics, especially during the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE. The battle between Sparta and Athens was a collision of cultures as much as a struggle for supremacy. While Sparta, with its famed warriors, concentrated on land-based military might, Athens, a maritime state, depended on its navy. But the Romans organized combat to previously unheard-of lengths. With its legions and rigorous discipline, the Roman military established the benchmark for armies to come. The Roman Empire engaged in combat on several fronts, such as the Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BCE, against Carthage, which demonstrated the value of naval warfare. The fact that Hannibal crossed the Alps to invade Italy is still regarded as one of the greatest military achievements in history. Notwithstanding their early setbacks, the Romans, led by Scipio Africanus, secured their supremacy in the Mediterranean by defeating Carthage at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. The medieval era, when feudal kingdoms and empires would rise and fall through military conquest, was brought about by the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, rather than the end of warfare. Medieval times, crusades and chivalry. The emergence of feudalism and the predominance of castles and knights were the hallmarks of the Middle Ages. With lords leading armies of vassals and mercenaries, warfare was frequently decentralized. The Vikings appeared in the early medieval era and invaded and settled most of Europe. They were able to quickly attack coastal settlements thanks to their longships, which were groundbreaking for their day. The Crusades, a sequence of religious conflicts between Christians and Muslims over possession of the Holy Land, started in the 11th century. In addition to being religious, the Crusades were political as European kings aimed to gain more power. Jerusalem was taken by Christian armies during the First Crusade, 1096 to 1099, but Christian rule over the area was not sustained during further crusades. New military innovations brought along by the Crusades, such as the trebuchet and the crossbow, would have a lasting impact on warfare for centuries. In the East, the Mongol Empire arose at the same time. The Mongols rose to become one of the most powerful military powers in history under Genghis Khan's leadership. The Mongol Empire had expanded from China to Eastern Europe by the time of Genghis Khan's death in 1227. The highly inventive and disciplined Mongol army used strategies like psychological warfare and staged retreats. Throughout the Eurasian continent, they were a scary force due to their speed and capacity to travel great distances quickly. The Gunpowder Revolution and the Renaissance. With the emergence of strong centralized nations and the use of gunpowder in combat, the 15th and 16th centuries saw significant upheaval in Europe. Longbowmen and early weapons were first widely used during the Hundred Years' War, 1337 to 1453, between England and France. Medieval warfare tactics changed when the longbow proved successful against heavily armored knights in the warfare of Agincourt in 1415. But it was the development of gunpowder weaponry, such as cannons and rifles, that brought about the true change. Feudal levies were superseded by the professional standing army during the Renaissance. Disciplined formations like the Pike Square became increasingly important as armies became more concentrated. As Spain and Portugal fought for control of other lands during this time, naval might also increase, ushering in the era of European exploration and colonization. The Battle of Lepanto, 1571, in which a coalition of Christian forces commanded by Spain routed the Ottoman Empire's navy, was one of the most important conflicts of the Renaissance. This triumph illustrated the growing significance of naval warfare and assisted in halting the Ottoman expansion into Europe. The Revolutionary Era and the development of contemporary warfare revolutions and the development of contemporary military tactics characterized the 17th and 18th centuries. The new model army, a professional, disciplined force that proved crucial in the struggle, was first deployed during the English Civil War, 1642 to 1651. The establishment of a constitutional monarchy in England during the Glorious Revolution of 1688 had an impact on the growth of the British Army and Navy. The climax of this era was the Napoleonic Wars, 1803 to 1815. Napoleon Bonaparte's emphasis on speed, agility, and the use of artillery transformed military strategy and tactics. One of the biggest and strongest armies in history, Napoleon's Grande Armée changed the face of Europe with its triumphs, including the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805. His unsuccessful invasion of Russia in 1812, however, signaled the beginning of the end for his empire and ultimately led to his collapse. By instituting conscription and large military mobilization, the Napoleonic Wars also established the groundwork for contemporary combat. Total war, in which entire societies are mobilized for fighting, gained popularity. The World Wars and the Industrial Revolution. Significant developments in warfare were brought about by the Industrial Revolution. The battlefield was changed by the development of rifled muskets, ironclad warships, and later tanks and aircraft. Modern industrial warfare was inspired by the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. In addition to being a precursor to the mechanical combat that would characterize the 20th century, it witnessed the first widespread use of railroads, telegraphs, and ironclad warships. The first genuinely worldwide conflict, which involved the major European nations and their colonies, was World War I, 1914 to 1918. Modern technologies, including machine guns, poison gas, tanks, and airplanes, were introduced throughout the war. The Western Front trench fighting came to represent the conflict's ruthlessness and inertia. The Russian, Ottoman, German, and Austro-Hungarian empires were among those that fell as a result of the war, despite its atrocities. In human history, the most deadly conflict was World War II, 1939 to 1945. Large-scale conflicts like the Normandy invasion and the Battle of Stalingrad, as well as strategic bombing campaigns that decimated entire towns, were hallmarks of the conflict. As Nazi Germany attempted to wipe out entire populations, the conflict also saw the Holocaust, one of the most horrifying genocides in history. The creation and deployment of nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki not only ended the war, but also gave rise to the horrifying idea of nuclear conflict. Contemporary conflicts and the Cold War. The globe was split into two ideological groups following World War II, the Soviet Union-led Communist East and the capitalist West, led by the United States. The Cold War, 1947 to 1991, a time of fierce political and military rivalry that did not turn into open conflict between the superpowers, was brought on by this division. Rather, espionage, proxy conflicts, and an arms race, especially in nuclear weapons, were the hallmarks of the Cold War. The larger Cold War fight included conflicts like the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, and the Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975. In addition to including enormous military interventions by the superpowers and their allies, these conflicts served as a metaphor for the ideological conflict between communism and democracy. The nature of warfare has changed in the 21st century. The frequency of traditional conflicts between superpowers has decreased, while asymmetric warfare, cyber warfare, and terrorism have increased. The September 11, 2001 attacks set off the War on Terror, which has resulted in protracted wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other Middle Eastern countries. In conclusion, war has a lengthy and intricate history that has been influenced by social, political, and technological developments. War has always existed in human history, from the first struggles for survival to the major world wars of the 20th century. Wars have frequently acted as catalysts for change, causing the rise and fall of civilizations, the redrawing of borders, and the remaking of international power structures, despite the tremendous destruction and death toll. The character of battle will change as technology advances. Even though there will always be conflict in the world, learning from the past can help us avoid making the same mistakes again, and possibly even pave the way for peace in the future.